So, as the investigation gains traction, the questions are piling up. How did a passenger plane end up flying through such a volatile region? Senior correspondent Adrienne Arsenault takes a closer look at the circumstances to be factored in.
Eerily enough, there it is, MH17 taking off from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam this afternoon, roughly half an hour late. It was heading for Kuala Lumpur in relatively busy airspace. We know the flight was using a route called L980, not exactly as was initially planned, just 300 kilometers off the normal path because of thunderstorms in the area. Not serious storms, not trouble anywhere near as serious as what's been going on the ground in eastern Ukraine. Fighting with pro-Russian separatists that's been coming in spasms and getting worse this week after reports from Ukrainian authorities that both a military cargo plane and a military jet were shot down. Those in the aviation world knew all about that, according to a Canadian who once negotiated flight routes over conflict areas.
It was a troubled region, and of course, lower flights were not permitted. And the airplane was flying above the flight level, which was considered to be, above that, considered to be totally safe. When there is conflicts in the area, you try to avoid the lower flights.
So no official warnings for passenger jets then, only a caution back in April about a nearby patch of airspace over Crimea. European carriers were concerned about the political uncertainty over who was in charge of the airspace, Russia or Ukraine. It's unsafe if more than one air traffic service provider is in charge of one single flight information region, wrote the European Safety Agency. So the Europeans, the Americans, the Canadians all took the advice and largely avoided the region. But MH17 was on track. 4 hours into the flight at 33,000 feet, again, what was considered a safe altitude, the flight registers its last contact near the Russian-Ukrainian border. No warning messages, no distress calls. Residents nearby suddenly start sending out panicked and increasingly grim pictures. And there's a social media post thought to be from a Russian separatist leader, which roughly translates to, "In the region of Taurus, an Anatov 26 was just shot down. Then came a warning, do not fly in our skies." If that really was from a separatist leader, he seemed to think they'd shot down a Ukrainian military plane. Very quickly, the message was pulled down. Then came a voice recording that Ukrainian officials say was a conversation between pro-Russian rebels. Some of it suggests the people on the tape are a bit confused as to what was shot down.
Are there any weapons there?
No, nothing. Just civilian things. Medication, towels, toilet paper.
Is that real or just propaganda? Frankly, that will be debated for a while. What seems to be accepted as fact is this was a surface-to-air missile strike, and there are weapons capable of doing that in the area. Ukrainian officials claim a missile launcher was captured by pro-Russian rebels not long ago, and it had capabilities of hitting flights at least as high as MH17 was traveling. It would do it by honing in on the heat and light of the engine.
It's not a hard target to hit in the sense that unlike some planes that have defensive measures that are able to maneuver, that would have warning that they're being targeted by a missile, a civilian airliner wouldn't probably not have any of those things.
Not surprisingly, almost immediately, airlines around the world started ordering wide detours around the whole area, suspending all flights over Ukraine. Just look at the flight tracker websites and the wide berth all those flights are giving the region. It's such a clinical view, and this is such a horribly real one. The scorched soil of eastern Ukraine, some bodies still strapped into their seats in a war zone, hours coming and going, and no one to tend to them.
Oh, it's so horrifying. Adrienne, what should we look for to happen next?
It's believed that there's enough satellite data at this point to track back and figure out exactly where the launch site was. That's going to be important to figure out what side of the border did it come from. Getting accountability, though, is going to be a real problem. It's very clear that there's so much chaos on the ground. No one is really in control on the ground, that finding that piece of investigative material is going to be tough. So for the sake of the investigation, for the sake of the dignity of the dead, people want to get to that site and deal with it as quickly as possible. But we've already seen scenes of looting. We've seen scenes of people taking bits of the plane away. This is a catastrophe, and it's become a lot more complicated.
Thanks so much, Adrienne. Adrienne Arsenault tonight.